Mina had lived in the small quiet house for many years, and she believed she knew every sound, every shadow, and every small change in her backyard. The old tree near the fence always leaned the same way, the soft ground near the kitchen window always stayed a little damp, and the narrow space behind the shed never grew grass no matter how much rain came. One warm morning she decided to plant new flowers near the far corner of the yard because spring had filled her with fresh energy and hope. She pushed the shovel into the soil again and again, enjoying the soft sound of earth moving, until suddenly the shovel struck something hard with a sharp shock that made her arms tremble. She froze and looked down at the disturbed soil. Her heart began to beat faster as she pushed the dirt aside with careful hands and uncovered the edge of something smooth and cold. At first, she thought it was a stone or old metal trash, but the more she cleared the area, the larger it became, and soon she realized she was looking at a strong metal surface buried beneath the ground. Her breath grew tight as she kept brushing away dirt, revealing sharp, straight edges that could not belong to any natural object. It was a door sealed tightly into the earth right in the middle of her backyard. Mina sat back on the grass staring at it in disbelief. Her mind raced with questions. Her house had always seemed normal. Nothing strange had ever appeared before she touched the metal and felt the cold strength beneath her fingers. It was real and solid and carefully built. She noticed a heavy handle and a strange round dial beside it. Her hands trembled as she tried to lift the handle, but it did not move. She pulled harder, but the door stayed sealed as if it had never been meant to open again. Fear and curiosity blended inside her chest. She looked around the yard to see if anyone was watching, but the street was silent and empty. The quiet made the discovery feel even more unreal. She stepped away and paced slowly. Trying to calm herself, she told herself it was probably an old storm shelter built long ago, but deep down she sensed it was something far more serious, something intentionally hidden. She returned and studied the surface again, noticing small scratches and marks that told a story of age and use. She brushed away the last of the dirt and saw a faded mark near the center of the door, a strange symbol that meant nothing to her but made her skin prickle. With unease, she leaned down and placed her ear close to the metal, listening carefully. At first, she heard nothing. Then she thought she heard something faint, a deep soft hum that felt more like movement than sound. She pulled back quickly as her chest tightened. The idea that something might still exist beneath her ground unsettled her deeply. She covered the door loosely with an old cloth from the shed and slowly went back inside her house, her thoughts tangled and heavy. That night sleep would not come easily. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the metal surface beneath the soil and felt the strange energy beneath it. When morning arrived, she rose early and returned to the yard with cautious steps. The cloth lay still and untouched. She uncovered the door again with shaky hands and studied it under the pale morning light. The metal looked even stronger in daylight, and the thick hinges suggested that whatever lay below had once been sealed with great care. She walked around the yard slowly and noticed faint, long lines in the soil leading toward the door, patterns that did not match nature. Near the fence, she found a small vent hidden under leaves and dirt. When she cleared it, a slow stream of cool air touched her fingers, confirming that the space beneath was not empty. Her heart beat louder as she backed away. She now knew without doubt that something was hidden under her land, not abandoned, not lifeless, but waiting. She sat on the porch, holding her arms tightly around herself, trying to decide what to do. She felt a strange weight on her mind, as if her discovery had bound her to the secret beneath her feet. She thought of calling someone, but a quiet voice inside her warned that once she spoke about it, her simple life would never return the way it was. The sun climbed higher, and the quiet yard looked peaceful again, yet the ground beneath it now felt different, unstable, and full of mystery. She realized that the calm surface of her life had been broken by one hidden door, and whatever lay behind it would soon change everything. And even though fear sat heavy in her chest, she knew she could not turn away from the truth that had come to light beneath her own. Mina spent the rest of the morning sitting near the hidden door, pretending to work in her yard, while her thoughts stayed trapped beneath the soil. She watered the plants, she trimmed dry leaves, she wiped the dust from the porch railing, yet her eyes returned again and again to the place where the metal door rested under a thin cover of cloth. Every sound felt louder than before. Every small breeze made her turn her head with sudden fear. She felt as if the ground beneath her house had become a quiet stranger holding secrets it did not wish to share. By afternoon, the weight in her chest became too heavy to carry alone. She knew she could not ignore the discovery any longer, and yet she also knew she could not face it without help. Her hands shook as she reached for her phone. She hesitated again, then slowly put it back on the table. She needed proof before calling anyone. She needed to know for herself what truly waited below. As evening drew near, she gathered the few tools she owned: a small crowbar, a flashlight, and thick gloves. Her heart raced with each step as she walked toward the hidden door. She pulled the cloth away and knelt beside the metal surface. Once more she placed the crowbar under the edge of the handle and pushed with slow steady force. At first nothing happened, then a faint metallic shift echoed through the yard. The sound made her breath catch with fear and hope. She pushed again, harder this time. The handle moved, just a little. A sharp cold sound filled the air as the seal cracked. After years of silence, the movement released a burst of cool air that brushed across her face, carrying a scent that felt old and forgotten, like dust and metal, and time itself. Mina stepped back, startled by the sudden change. She stood frozen for a long moment, gathering her courage, then slowly returned to the door and lifted the handle fully. The heavy metal cover rose with deep resistance, revealing a dark opening beneath the ground. She aimed her flashlight downward. Her heart thundered in her chest as the beam cut through the darkness and revealed a narrow metal staircase leading deep below the surface. The steps were coated in rust, yet still strong. The walls reflected the faint light, showing curved metal surfaces built with care and purpose. Mina stood at the edge, struggling to breathe. The truth settled over her clearly now. This was no simple shelter. This place had been hidden with intention, built to remain unseen. She tightened her grip on the flashlight and placed one foot cautiously on the first step. The metal held her weight with a low echo. She took another step, then another. Each movement carried her deeper into the unknown. The air grew cooler with each step, and the silence thickened around her until even her breathing sounded distant. The beam of light shook as her hands trembled, but she forced herself to continue. She reached the bottom of the stairs and stepped onto a metal floor. The space before her slowly came into view as her light traveled across it, revealing a wide round chamber with curved walls. Thick pipes ran along the ceiling and disappeared into the shadows. Machines stood frozen along the sides, coated in dust, their shapes strange and unfamiliar to her eyes. At the far end of the room stood a heavy sealed door similar to the one above, grounded and solid, as if guarding something beyond. Mina turned slowly, absorbing every detail. Her mind struggled to understand what she was seeing. Everything felt built for purpose, yet time had stolen its motion. She walked forward with careful steps. Each footstep echoed through the chamber, as if the space itself were answering her presence. She reached one of the machines and brushed away dust with her glove. The surface beneath remained smooth and strong, marked with worn symbols and faded colors. She did not recognize any of it, yet everything felt important, connected to a story long buried. She realized suddenly that she was not alone after all, not truly alone. Something about the room made her feel watched, not by eyes but by memory itself. She raised her flashlight higher, sweeping it across the ceiling and walls, seeking movement, yet nothing stirred. The silence returned heavy and unchanged. She moved closer to the lifted door at the far end. Her breath caught as she noticed faint marks near the frame, signs that it had been opened at least once long ago. Her hand hovered near the sealed handle, but a wave of fear rushed through her, and she pulled back suddenly. Whatever lay beyond that door felt different, heavier than the rest of the chamber. She sensed she was standing at the edge of something far greater than curiosity. The quiet beneath the earth felt tense, like a breath held for years. She backed away slowly and returned toward the stairs. Her legs felt weak, yet she forced herself upward, climbing with growing urgency. The air warmed with each step until the sounds of the world above finally returned. She emerged into her backyard, trembling and breathless. The sky had darkened with evening, and the first stars had begun to appear. As she lowered the door into place again, sealing the bunker, she felt as though she had resurfaced from a forgotten world. She covered the entrance carefully and returned to her porch. Her hands shook so badly she could barely set the tools down. Her discovery had gone far beyond what she had imagined, and now she understood one truth clearly: whatever lay beneath her home was not abandoned, it had been hidden and preserved with purpose. And now that purpose had begun to awaken within her, fear filled her heart, yet beneath it burned a powerful need to understand. She sat in the fading light, watching over the quiet yard, knowing that the life she had known before today had. Mina did not sleep that night, and when morning arrived it felt more like a warning than a comfort. She sat at the kitchen table with cold tea, watching soft light move across the wall while her thoughts stayed trapped below the ground with the quiet machines and the sealed door. Her body felt tired, but her mind would not rest. Every small sound from outside made her tense, and every shadow near the window made her turn her head. She told herself again and again that she had sealed the bunker, and that nothing could reach her, yet the feeling of being watched did not fade. As the sun rose higher, she forced herself to move through her routine. She washed the cups, she folded clothes, she stood at the sink and stared into the yard, where everything still looked peaceful. The grass swayed, the tree leaves whispered gently, and the hidden door stayed quiet under its cover. That quiet scared her more than noise ever could. She stepped outside slowly, with careful steps, like someone entering unfamiliar land. The tools from the night before still lay near the porch, and she picked them up one by one and placed them back in the shed, as if cleaning could return her world to balance. But order did not return. Instead, the weight in her Chest grew heavier as the hours passed. She felt drawn to the backyard again, and again pulled by a silent thread that tightened with each moment. By midday, she stood once more near the hidden door, her hands trembling as she brushed the cloth aside just enough to see the metal surface still sealed exactly as she had left it. A weak sense of relief passed through her, but it did not last long. She noticed something new, a faint dark line near the edge of the door where the seal met the frame. It looked damp, as if moisture had gathered there. She reached out with shaking fingers and touched the mark, then pulled back quickly when she felt coldness sharper than the metal itself. Her breath caught as fear wrapped tighter around her chest. She told herself it could be nothing more than water from the soil, yet deep inside she knew the bunker had changed. After she opened it, the space beneath had awakened in some quiet way, and now it was responding. She stepped back and covered the door once more, but the feeling stayed with her like an unseen presence behind her shoulder. She returned to the house and closed the door, locking it. Even though she knew locks meant little against fear, she tried to distract herself with sound, and switched on the radio, letting soft voices fill the room, yet every word faded behind the steady rhythm of her heartbeat. As afternoon passed, she began to feel isolated, as if her quiet home had become an island cut off from the rest of the world. She wanted to call someone, to speak to another human voice, to let light into her thoughts, yet she could not bring herself to explain what she had found. The words felt too heavy, too strange to share. Near evening, she heard a faint sound beneath her feet. While standing in the kitchen, it was not loud, not even clear, yet it was enough to make her freeze. A low, distant vibration, like the slow turning of something deep under stone. She bent down, pressing her palm to the floor, holding her breath and listening with every part of her body. The feeling passed after a few seconds, but it left her shaking. She backed away from the spot with wide eyes, now certain that the bunker was no longer silent. She spent the next hour sitting on the couch with the radio off, listening to the quiet house and the softer, quieter world beneath it. She did not know what waited below the sealed door, but she knew it was no longer only memory. The past had stirred, and now it was reaching up toward her. Life, as twilight crept in, the air inside the house felt colder than it should have been, and her breath fogged faintly as she exhaled. She wrapped a blanket around her shoulders and stood by the window, watching the yard grow dark. Little by little the tree became a shadow, the shed became a shape, and the place where the bunker lay became invisible once more. And yet she felt it more clearly now than ever before. The ground beneath her home felt alive with hidden motion, and unanswered intent. Fear urged her to stay inside, to lock every door and wait for daylight, yet a stronger force within her pushed her toward truth. She knew with sudden clarity that hiding from what lay beneath her would only leave her trapped between worlds, uncertain and afraid, and she had always promised herself that fear would never rule her life. With slow, steady steps, she took the flashlight from the drawer and pulled on her gloves again. Her hands shook as she opened the back door and stepped into the cool evening air. The sounds of the street were distant now, far away and faint, as if the world had pulled back, leaving her alone with a secret beneath her feet. She moved toward the covered door and lifted the cloth. Her breath caught when she saw that the dark line she had noticed earlier had grown wider and traced part of the seam around the metal door like a path of cold shadow. She knelt beside it, heart hammering, and placed her ear near the surface again. This time she did not need to guess. Beneath the metal she heard it clearly, a steady, slow mechanical sound like deep breathing from a hidden chest. Her fear sharpened into certainty. Whatever lay below was active. She pressed her palm to the metal and felt a vibration, faint but real, rising into her skin and bones. She pulled her hand back with a gasp and stumbled to her feet. The choice was no longer between curiosity and silence, it was between action and danger. She backed away slowly from the door, her eyes never leaving the covered shape beneath the cloth. She returned to the house with unsteady steps, closing the door behind her and leaning against it, as if the thin barrier could protect her from what lay below. Her breathing came fast and shallow, and her chest felt tight. She moved through the house, checking every window, every lock, every corner, as if expecting something to rise from the floor itself. Nothing did. The house stayed quiet, yet the sound beneath her feet continued, faint but steady, a reminder that the hidden world had not gone back to sleep. She stood in the center of the living room, wrapped in silence, realizing that the quiet life she once knew had already slipped beyond reach. The secret beneath her home was no longer hers to keep, and the truth pressed against her from below and above, demanding to be seen and known. She reached for her phone at last, her fingers hovering above the screen, her hesitation finally breaking as fear turned into resolve. She did not yet press the numbers, but she knew that the moment was close, and that once the call was made, the hidden bunker would remain a secret no longer, and the quiet life she had once cherished would open like the metal door beneath her back. Mina stood in the quiet living room with the phone in her hand, feeling the steady vibration from beneath the floor travel up through her feet into her bones. The sound was soft but constant, like a distant engine turning slowly in the deep dark. She closed her eyes for a moment and took a long breath, trying to steady her racing heart. Then she opened her eyes again. and looked around her home, the pictures on the wall, the small plant near the window, the chair where she drank tea every morning, all of it felt fragile now, as if it rested on something unknown, and shifting beneath her, she lifted the phone to her ear, and with trembling fingers pressed the numbers for help. Her voice shook as she spoke, yet the words came clear. She told them she had found a hidden space under her backyard, and that strange sounds were coming from below. She did not know what it was, but she was afraid. When the call ended, the house felt even quieter than before. The hum beneath her feet seemed louder now, as if whatever waited below had sensed the change. She sat on the couch, holding her knees close to her chest, and waited, each second stretched long and heavy with fear and expectation. The sky outside the window darkened deeper into night, and the yard disappeared into shadow, yet the shape of the hidden door stayed sharp in her mind. After what felt like endless time, she heard distant sounds from the streetlights flashing slowly across the walls of her living room. The arrival brought a strange mix of relief and new fear. Voices sounded outside, calm, firm, and steady. She opened the door and stepped onto the porch with unsteady legs, and met several figures standing beneath the glow of the street light. They listened carefully as she told her story again, this time in fuller detail, her voice trembling as she described the metal door, the stairs, the machines, and the sealed inner chamber. Their faces grew serious as they exchanged quiet glances. One of them asked her to stay inside while they checked the yard. She obeyed, and stood behind the door watching through the window as they moved carefully across the grass, shining bright lights over the ground. Their beams crossed and shifted, revealing the place where the door lay hidden beneath the cloth. One of them lifted the cover and stepped back with a slow breath. They stood still for a long moment, then signaled for more light. The quiet inside the house felt heavier with every second that passed. The hum beneath the floor continued, unmoved by the activity above it. Then came a different sound, the deep scrape of metal, as the hidden door was lifted. Once more the vibration beneath her feet grew slightly stronger, as if the space below was responding to the opening. She covered her mouth with shaking hands and watched through the glass as the bright beams of light descended into the dark opening. One by one the figures moved down the stairs and vanished below the earth, leaving only the empty night and the quiet yard behind. After several long minutes that felt like hours, the hum beneath her feet faded slowly until it became silence again. The sudden quiet felt just as frightening as the sound had been. Mina stood frozen, unsure whether that was a sign of safety or something far worse. Then voices rose from below, faint at first, then clearer as the figures began to return one by one. Their faces were tense and thoughtful as they climbed back into the yard. One of them approached the porch and spoke gently, telling her that what she had discovered was an old underground site built long ago and sealed in secrecy. They did not yet know its full purpose, but they had found machines that still held power and systems that had recently reactivated on their own. They told her she had done the right thing by calling, because whatever rested below had reached the end of its silent rest. Mina listened in stunned silence as the truth settled over her. The hidden space beneath her simple home had not only been real but active all this time, waiting through years of quiet earth and forgotten memory. She felt weak as the weight of it pressed down on her shoulders. They told her that the area would now be secured and studied, and that she would not be able to live in the house for some time. She nodded slowly, unable to form words, as she watched them begin to prepare the yard for long work ahead. Lights filled the once dark grass, and quiet machines hummed above ground now, in place of the hidden sound that had haunted her for days. As the night stretched on, Mina sat on the porch wrapped in a borrowed blanket, watching the strange new reality take shape around her home. The yard that once held roses and quiet memories now held cables, lights, and careful movements. The secret beneath her life had risen fully into the open at last. Dawn arrived, slowly washing the sky with pale color and revealing the scene in full clarity. Her house still stood unchanged, yet everything around it had transformed. Where mystery once hid beneath the soil, truth now stood in bright open light. As the sun rose, Mina felt exhaustion sweep over her, yet beneath it flowed a calm she had not felt since before the discovery. Fear still lived in her chest, but it no longer ruled every breath. The hidden hum had stopped. The dark unknown beneath her feet had been seen and named, even if its full story was yet to be told. As the morning grew brighter, one of them returned to tell her that the site would be handled by others now, and that she was safe. They thanked her for her courage and her trust in speaking up. Mina looked out at her yard one last time before leaving the place that had been her quiet world for so long. She saw the lifted door standing open to the sky and thought of all the years it had slept unseen beneath her footsteps. She thought of the first moment her shovel struck metal, and how that single sound had quietly changed everything. As she walked away down the porch steps, she felt both loss and relief. The simple life she had known was gone, but the fear that had crept beneath it was gone as well. The ground beneath her feet felt steady again, and for the first time since the discovery, she took a full, deep breath without trembling, knowing that the secret under her backyard no longer belonged to shadow and silence, but to truth and light. Yard